Greetings of the day to everyone. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Airworthy Talks by Udaan Aviation Academy. Today's episode, we have with us a very special guest from the world of aviation industry, someone who has not only contributed immensely when it comes to the safety side of the industry, but is also a true visionary when it comes to exploring the world of aviation industry. It is none other than Mr. Vance Hilderman, CEO at Fusion. Good morning, Vam. Namaste, and welcome to our show.
Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We've got people all around the world, so we never sleep. Let's just have a great morning, evening, afternoon conversation.
Right, perfect. So, Vance, throughout the decades, you have worn many hats within the aviation industry. So, could you tell our audience that what is that you do for a living, and how has been your journey within the aviation industry?
Oh, I'd be happy to. It's good to change hats, but also wear different hats all the time. That it keeps you exciting. You won't be boring. For myself, I'm an engineer. I have several college degrees, a couple masters, a Hughes fellow. I worked for Hughes Aircraft, which is a place that Howard Hughes founded. And many smart people there. I wondered how I got picked to work with all these smart people. I thought I was the stupid one, but when you're with people smarter than you, that's how you learn. And if you're not with people smarter than you need to get with people smarter than you, because that's how you learn. And so we just progressed from there. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, Top Gun, but I'm actually the same age as Tom Cruise. He's a lot better looking than me. But I passed the brain test, the physical test, but the vision test, my vision isn't perfect. And I guess for some reason, I don't know why, you have to have good vision to land on an aircraft carrier in rough seas at night, right? So I failed that part and decided, well, I can't be a fighter pilot. I don't want to be the navigator. So let's design aircraft, let's design systems. And my companies just grew and succeeded really well, and a lot of passion. And again, everybody who's worked for me is always smarter than me. So let's keep surrounded by smart people.
Right. I mean, it brings me to a very famous quote by Jack Ma, who is the founder of Alibaba. He has always said that surround yourself with smarter people so that you always feel the pump of, growing with them and taking companies to new heights. And I'm sure that that has worked for
Very
you and
good.
Fusion as well. Right.
Brilliant. That's an international philosophy we need to all adhere to very well.
Right. Since we are talking about your organization, Fusion, I just wanted to understand, and again, this is something new for our viewers as well, as to what part of the
Oh,
aviation puzzle is Fusion trying to solve within your
ah,
space. Yeah.
Great idea. It's interesting. People think big companies and good companies like Boeing, Airbus, Leonardo, Lockheed, that they design all the aircraft. Well, they really don't. They
Mhm.
build and integrate the aircraft. They delegate the systems, and most of the R&D cost these days is in the computer systems. For example, a new Airbus Boeing aircraft is about $5 billion. That's a B billion. That's called real money in software. So that's what the software costs for the first aircraft. And that software is built by companies like Rockwell Collins, Honeywell, Thales, but they outsource a lot of that. And there's a few
Right.
companies like a Fusion that actually do most of the software. And it's
Mhm.
quite interesting. You don't think of that when you get in the airplane, or you look at your car. Everybody has a car, but Ford, Toyota, Mercedes, much of that
Mhm.
technology development is actually outsourced. And so a Fusion has about 30, 35 projects per year. And at any one time, between 10 and 15 projects that we're working on, it might be urban air mobility upgrades, new electric aircraft, rotorcraft, some military aircraft, high
Wow.
altitude satellites, low Earth orbit, space travel for a couple companies that we can't mention, those darn non-disclosure agreements. But it's really exciting. Aerospace, folks, aerospace has so much demand, so much money, and so much need. Don't go to Silicon Valley. Don't go to, the internet, Facebook, TikTok. Come to aviation. It's a lot more fun.
Right. And quite an interesting pack of things which Fusion is working on, and software seems to be the driving force of how aviation has turned out to be today. if you looked at softwares of 80s versus today, I mean,
Mm,
there is a tectonic shift out there. But despite of all this growth, Vance, we still find incidences with the 737, so the MCAS system
mm,
going bust, or
mm.
something or the other. You always find software as a huge challenge. Why that is the reason?
Oh, great question. At the same time that the demand for software, the amount of software in an airplane is increasing, the complexity of those interconnections between systems is rapidly, exponentially increasing
Mhm.
even more. The automation in the cockpit, today's pilot might have less flying skills than yesterday's pilot, but much more technological skills required. And a fusion trains about 4,000 engineers each year from
Wow.
30 different countries, 100 companies or more, just doing private training sessions, 30 to 50 people per class. And there's a huge need to understand how these standards work. We have these funny words like DO 178, 254, ARP 4754. All aviation engineers know these. And these standards are relatively new, getting more complex, and trying to manage this complexity. But we want all the listeners to know that aviation is and always will be 5 or 10 times at least safer than driving in a car. Last
Mm.
year during COVID, we had 1 million deaths in cars, but you don't read about those.
True.
But aviation, it's a few hundred, maybe 1,000 in a bad year, but per mile, per kilometer, aviation is safe. We want to ensure that everybody can be safe, but we need our listeners to come help us manage this complexity. We also have faster time to market. Money, money, money. Everybody wants to make more money, the aircraft manufacturers. So there's these competing pressures for market, money, technology. It's a real challenge.
Right, absolutely right. And you have rightly put this story across, whereby if you compare aviation or air travel with other modes of transportation, yes, it is still the safest. Yes, it is still the fastest, and that's where the growth factor is. And yes, you
Mm,
get hiccups like 737s every often, but then the safety record is primarily much better. I totally agree with you on that.
yeah, yeah.
Just a couple of seconds before, you talked about a fusion working on the personal air mobility front. Now, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want whom you are working with. That is a part of your NDA. But but I just wanted to sort of understand that in terms of software capabilities, how far are we from a true
Ooh,
personal air mobility? Yeah.
we are there now. And we love Elon Musk. Elon Musk, everybody knows Mr. Musk. He's an interesting guy. He's not politically correct. He's refreshing and he tells it like it is, whether we like the opinion or not, right? And I have my Cybertruck on order. I'm hoping to get it in 6 months. So that's a good
Awesome.
thing. Yeah. Now self-driving mode, Mr. Musk's and also Mercedes is doing it. BMW, everybody's doing self-driving mode. We can use it today and be quite safe. Okay, but it's not certified, and aviation is a bit behind. So technologically, we can do it today. Okay,
Hmm.
we have aircraft out there in prototype mode that are working. In aviation, we can fly experimental aircraft. Okay, and maybe there's many pilots listening. I'm a pilot. We don't need the same certification or licensing for experimental aircraft, but we can't fly them to cool places like to cities, bad weather,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And so they're not really that useful. It's like a talking frog. Okay. It's a talking frog is really cool to show your friends, but really, what's that frog going to teach you, right? It just
Absolutely.
looks cool. So a personal aircraft that can't really be flown, it just kind of looks cool. But we're there now. A Fusion helped Pipistrel with their safety assessments, their certification. And if you know aviation, you know that Pipistrel over in Slovenia, Italy, was the first company in the world to certify an all-electric aircraft. That's
Wow.
really cool. They've made over 1,000 personal aircraft, a couple seaters, and it's flying today. You can buy this very cost effective. Okay, so we helped them with that. And now there's many urban air mobility companies. We're helping many of them come to market, develop, certify their software. It's
Hmm.
there, but I think actual certified uh, urban air mobility is about 2 or 3 years away. Okay.
Mhm.
All the people promise it's tomorrow, but Joby Aviation, Whisk Aviation, I think they're being a little optimistic in certification costs, just like Eclipse Aviation was a few years ago. Look at great companies like Honda of Japan, fantastic company, but it took a few years more to certify their regular aircraft, right?
Yeah,
Their small jet, Honda jet.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it takes a lot of money to do that, a lot of time, but it is happening. And the autonomous flying now, that's really cool. That's where you can get in the aircraft without being a pilot and it'll fly you. We are at least 25 years away. I hope to see it in my lifetime for sure. You young guys and ladies will see it. My kids will see it. So it's coming, but we have to think about the certification, the infrastructure. Everybody has a high expectation on aviation, so we have to be better.
Yeah, absolutely right. And if you look at public perception out there, if you tell that what you will be having flying cars going forward, and yes, they get excited about it, but at the same time they wonder, such flying cars are right on top of their head, and who knows, something might go wrong with them. So like every business, it has got its own risks and rewards. So how do you see this public perception which
Mm.
is out there around flying cars?
Well, I think there's three groups of people. And the largest group of people, strangely enough, because all of our listeners here, let's be honest,
Mm.
why are you listening to this great podcast? Because you have cool hosts, right? Well, you're into aviation. So about all of you. All of
Mm.
you can spell UAM, urban air mobility. But I have to tell you, when I travel around the world, I meet strangers in airports, I talk to trees, dogs, cats, I talk to anybody. Most of the people are in the first category of what is that? I've never heard of that. And you're going, what?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's eVTOL? What's
Mm.
eVTOL? And then you have the other group. Oh, no, I don't want flying things over my head. That's too much noise, too much
Mm.
interference. It's dangerous. But then you have us.
Yeah.
We're the innovators. All of your listeners, you're here because you're interested in the future. Okay. So I'd like to think that we're the important group who need to explain wisely, truthfully to those other two groups why it's going to be great. Just like computers, cars, the wheel, okay?
Mm. Yeah.
Fire, thousands of, fire's dangerous. Oh, we don't want fire, right? Well, there's a fire in your combustion engine in every cylinder, right? Okay, so it can be harnessed, but we're a long way, decades from the Jetsons, where you just tool around,
Mm.
hop around wherever you want to go. We're going to have corridors, okay, like roads in the sky. That's how
Mm.
it's going to work. And you'll have to fly one direction. There's going to be speed limits. Oh, no, it's not going to be like the Autobahn. Oh, it is like the Autobahn. You have
Mm.
to stay on the road and you only get to drive fast in the fast lane. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's how it's going to work.
Perfect. And I think that's a very good picture which you have painted out there for our listeners, that it is not going to be different. Like you have got highways on the road, you will have highways on the sky, and it will have all the
Yeah,
safety parameters associated with it. And that's how the actual thing is going to take place. Yes,
completely, completely.
yeah, absolutely right. And yes, it is kind of a far off thing just because of the safety critical elements associated with it. But there is something which is happening currently into the world of aviation. Something which the world is desperately looking up to the industry as is to have that switch from fossil fuel, powered aircrafts to be
Mm,
into that zone of electric aircrafts. Now, yes, it has been successful with smaller aircraft, smaller training
mhm,
aircrafts. And
mhm.
yes, we have achieved flight distances of 30 minutes. But where do you see this technology going forward in terms of energy density, in terms of the battery pack, and
Mm.
how far we away from applying the same into our narrow body aircrafts, let's say the size of a 320 or a 737? How far are we?
Oh, 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 we're getting closer. We're a decade and a half, maybe 20 years away. If we
Mhm.
look at the pipistrelle, people thought that 30 years ago, Iridium satellite constellation, they said it was impossible. Well,
Mhm.
50 of my engineers worked on that. Motorola paid us 25 million bucks, and we developed a lot of the software on Iridium, okay? And it works. It's what we're using today. So technology is amazing. Holding up my smartphone, this technology didn't exist 20 years ago. And now every 3-year-old is better than us at a smartphone. So Pipistrel, fantastic success story, but it's small, but it led the way to show certified aircraft are possible, and they're here today. They're working. We're working with a company in Sweden, Heart Aerospace. So to answer your question, they're making, and we don't have I think our NDA allows us to talk about it, not the technology, but Heart Aerospace is a great company, really growing. They're doing exactly what you said, which is small, a little smaller than an A320, more like a small regional turboprop, but that's the next step. And it goes a good distance. It carries cargo, ultimately can carry people. There's no difference between cargo and people. Low altitude, you don't need oxygen, you know. And so, some safety features you'd have to add a little more weight and cost, but the cargo is really cool. And so you think about cargo, most of the world's cargo on aircraft doesn't need to fly 5,000 kilometers. It's that last mile, that last 100 kilometers is really important. So that's where a lot of money is. And let's be honest, technology follows money, demand, right? Yeah. You cannot build a better mousetrap and they'll come. You also got battery companies. You mentioned battery density. One of the best, largest, and most advanced companies is a company called EPSys in Utah. They're our client also. And they're increasing the density and it's really improving. You've seen what Elon Musk and the car companies have done, densities that are 3 times greater than we thought 10 years ago, right? That does have a limitation. There's going to be some value in looking at hydrogen, but we're not quite sure how to commercialize that and really make that work on the aircraft. But the path is going to be first electric aircraft, but also some hybrid. Now, hybrid combination fuel, you know, hydrocarbon and battery is really cool. So eVTOL, I think, has some real great potential for the mixed mode, you know. But we're about 10 to 15 years away from full electric cargo aircraft, and then 20, 25 years away from full electric 500 kilometer to 1,000 kilometer A320 size aircraft. It's coming. Yeah.
It's coming. Yeah. Right. And you know, the same happened with the invention of aircrafts when Wright brothers brought it up in the year 1902. It just had it was just quite a second flight, and now we have got aircraft which could fly for 20 hours nonstop. So, and that's the technology.
Indeed.
That's the technology within a time frame of what, 95 odd years. And here we are with that kind of technology. So I think the similar revolution will happen with electric aircrafts. But while that electric is right out there and it is making its way, we have got a very exciting concept of sustainable aviation fuels. And you find that IATA has been putting a lot of emphasis on airlines switching some of their fuel purchase strategy to SAF so that we could bring down the emissions way below 2% in terms of our contribution towards greenhouse gas emission. But within the process, we find that there is a lot of greenwashing which takes place. There are airlines who do it like a one-off stunt, and after that, it's to your standard Jet A1. So how do you see this entire SAF concept as?
Oh my golly. Don't we all think maybe we need to take a break from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter for a couple of weeks to get away from some of the hype and silliness out there, right? Oh my. I would say it's not just greenwashing, it's greenwashing, you know.
Wow.
It's an interesting thing. The truth is that aviation is between 1.5% and 2.5% of the world's hydrocarbon footprint. It's almost non-consequential. We could actually inflate our car tires by 15% more and completely compensate for that. But that's not an excuse, okay? Because we want more aviation. We want more electric aviation, but electric isn't free either. You know, you've got the mining, the recycling aspects. There's some interesting trade-off decisions with electric as well. So look at aviation. If you remember anybody, if maybe talk to your grandparents, old people like me, 30 years ago, you had to stop having a conversation outside when the aircraft was overhead. Now you don't even hear them. This is 20 years, okay? So we've greatly improved aircraft efficiency. Look at the new 787 and A350. Look at the fantastic A380 and how it's being scrapped. You have 15-year-old aircraft being scrapped because they're not fuel efficient. Okay, it's just a matter of fuel cost. Okay, and so we're greatly improving aviation already on fuel efficiency, but there's a lot of greenwashing out there. Sustainable aviation fuels, okay, SAF. Now, do we have enough production to really replace all of the regular jet fuel? Oh boy, how do we get that fuel to market? What's the cost in fertilizer, transportation, trucks that bring that fuel to market? Ooh, be real careful with sustainable aviation fuels. It looks good, but be careful with how it looks when you wake up in the morning, my friends.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a very realistic story which you have just shared about. We create hypes around SAFs, but what goes behind the scene in order to not only produce that but also transport that, and is it actually beating the same carbon footprint of your standard Jet A1? That is yet to be proved out there. So yeah, a lot of studies are to be done
Oh
on that.
yeah. You know, it's
Um,
funny. I wonder if how many of our audience members have children. Now, when I have children, okay, we have 6 children, my wife and I. For the first child, it was all about uh, washing the diapers. Oh, nobody wants to talk about diapers. Well, folks, that's real life, okay? Well, instead of disposable diapers that caused pollution, you'd launder the diaper. Now think of all the detergent, all the water. Finally, when our child was 12 months old, a study came out, and we lived in Seattle, Washington, which is very politically correct. Okay. And finally, this study said, no, 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 disposable diapers are 30% more environmental friendly than washing the diapers. That was the day we threw away all our cloth diapers. Go disposable, folks. So you're engineers. We need more engineers. Let's talk about that, what we need for upcoming engineers, but you are
Absolutely.
smarter than that.
Oh
Let's talk
yes.
about engineers. Why don't we?
Absolutely right, and that is where we are heading towards too. Since we are talking about all of this exciting technology, how do you see the future of aviation in terms of careers, and what are a couple of upcoming
Ooh.
careers what do you recommend for our listeners out here?
Well, folks, almost anyone can be an engineer. If you're in a good place in life, you can accomplish anything you want. If you're not in a good place in life, it's up to you to change that. We need more engineers, okay? But
Mhm.
we won't just need theoretical engineers. Anyone can go to college and get good grades by studying. Um, any sentence that begins with "in theory" is guaranteed to be false, right? In theory, engineers need to be smart. No, no, no. Engineers need to know how to build things. That's why it's called engineering. So if you have a passion for building things, think about engineering, aviation engineering. Now, in my opinion, don't do what I did. Okay. I waited too long to get my aviation license. Folks, for about 5 to 6,000 US dollars, you can come to Florida, okay, to California where there's good weather, Arizona, and get your pilot's license. Oh, that's a lot of money. Well, you know what? What new car can you buy for $6,000? So just delay that new car purchase by a couple years, work a little extra hard, come to work for a Fusion part-time remotely, okay? And we'll put you to work. Save 6,000 bucks, get your pilot license, okay? Then you
Mhm.
will understand aviation. Think about it. All of you drive cars. Could an automotive engineer really be an automotive engineer without ever sitting in a car, knowing what a car does? No, they got to
Absolutely
drive the
not.
car.
Yeah.
So, folks, get your pilot license. And then there is no shortage of engineering jobs for you. There are no unemployed aviation engineers. Zero
Mhm.
today. It is a hotter market than it was in 96 and 99 in the whole dot-com explosion. Okay. We
Mhm.
are missing about 300,000 aviation engineers. So we need your help.
Wow. That's a very good pitch out there, Vance, for the entire aviation community out here. And
Yeah,
it's very important to understand that yes, theory is there at this place, but then when you build things and once you have the passion for it, that's when you stand in the long run. That's where you stand for the greater good of the industry. So I think it's a request to all my fellow listeners out here. Theory is good, but practical is where the heart of the industry lies, and that is where we need to be at. And you have done a very good thing out here to tell them about job opportunities, because a lot of people,
great.
they are not aware that such opportunity exists. And thanks for that highlight. Now,
Very good.
perfect. Now, I also wanted to understand that when you talk about building things, you need skills, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as per all of these future job roles, what we are seeing, or what you have just mentioned, in terms of engineering, what are top three skill sets which you feel is required for people to be in this industry?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, I bet all of our listeners have opened up an algebra book when they were in school, or maybe they're still in school. Now,
Mhm.
let's be honest. The first time you looked at the algebra book, now be honest, you opened it
Mhm.
up and said, oh, this is easy. This is trigonometry. And then you turn to page 20. Oh, it's a little more difficult. It's a little algebra. And then you opened page 100 and you said, what language is this? Right?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you learned it, right? You learned it. It's easy. It's the calculus. Well, that's theory. And remember what I said about theory. So, what we need for skill sets, obviously, you have to have some capability with calculus, math, science, but where do we really apply that? It's physics. Okay.
Mhm.
Physics is what makes things fly, enables things to fly, enables us to understand how to optimize flight. So, if you understand physics, then you understand algebra, calculus, math, science. It's applied, it's not just theory. So physics is a good one, and you can teach yourself or go to college. I think you really need a college degree, not because what you're learning in college is really what's going to help you for tomorrow. Remember, what you're learning in college is yesterday's technology because it's
Right.
taught by people who learned yesterday. But college is important because it teaches you how to think. You
Mhm.
have to figure out how to pay for college, how to take 5, 6 classes at a time while balancing real life, not just theory. And if you can do that, now you can be an engineer. So just make sure you get that college with physics, but also look at modeling. Okay. Now that's really applied model based development. In aviation, it's called DO. Okay, everybody, go to your browser right now. Yeah, on your phone. And DO, David Oscar hyphen 331. That's the aviation number for the modeling guideline, model based development. It's what the future is going to be for improved software system development, for safety. Remember, it only takes 3 or 4 people to cause an aircraft accident. Okay. A330 Airbus,
Right.
A400M Seville, Spain, 737 MAX. It takes 1,000 people for a
Mhm.
successful engineering development. So look at modeling. Modeling is really the future. Look at physics, and you'll be just fine.
Brilliant, brilliant thought out there, Vance, and I totally echo my voices with you on this. It is all about application part of it, and that's where the
Indeed.
true beauty of learning lies. Now my final question to you is, and this is where I want your visionary hat to be on. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you want to bet on one technology going forward for the world of aviation, or for the future of aviation, what is that going to be?
Ooh, that's a fun one. I'm going to say we're going to make a couple incremental steps. The
Mhm.
end goal is autonomous flying with artificial intelligence, but
Uh-huh.
that's a big leap. Okay, we're going to get there by electric hybrids first, and
Mhm.
then full electric, and then piloted urban air mobility, eVTOL. Okay, then personal piloted, and then autonomous. Okay, so I'm going to bet on the autonomous UAM 25
Mhm.
years from now. How about that? But we're going to get there, everybody, by electric hybrids and then real electric. Okay. And if you want to know how that whole ecosystem is going to work, my latest book, and you can read it free on Kindle, right? It's called The Aviation Development Ecosystem. And it's the worst book on the topic. I'm not kidding. There are no worse books than mine. Okay. But mine's the only book on the topic. So I call it the best book. Okay. Read it for free on Kindle, Aviation Development Ecosystem. This ecosystem did not exist 15 years ago. And now aviation development is all about the ecosystem of technical interrelationships between safe skies, the aircraft, the systems, the software, the hardware, and tens of thousands of engineers, none of which who understands more than 5% how they can work together in an ecosystem. So folks, run with that and you'll be flying soon.
Absolutely right. And I was just coming onto that ebook, but glad that you mentioned about it. And definitely for all our listeners, that is something which could act as a very good guidance. And although Vance might say it is the worst book out there, I'm sure that it will do a great justice to your aviation knowledge and your passion for aviation. Right, Vance?
Well, it is.
So
And
Vance,
that's why I wrote it, because I'm
yeah.
going to retire in a few years. And my wife said a few years ago, who's going to follow you? And I said, well, there's thousands of people. She goes, but you haven't taught them. I said, okay, I'm going to teach them in a 300-page book. I think it's 250. Folks, if you read that book and just read the free version, okay, on Amazon Kindle, it really will give you what you need.
Absolutely right. And we'll put down the link of that for our viewers to sort of have a first look for that. Right, Vance, with that, we come to the end of our podcast, but there is still an exciting session which is left. We called it as the rapid fire session with our guest. So a lot of quick questions, and let's see.
Yeah.
We are going to
Ooh,
test you heavily on this.
I
Right.
love
So
this.
Vance, perfect. So my first question to you is, what is that one thing which you have started to do in this pandemic, which you were not doing previously?
Ooh, waking up early at 4 a.m. for telephone calls that I used to fly to Europe for, staying up till midnight for calls I used to go to New Zealand, Korea, China for. Okay, that's a big one. And spending more time with my wife in the last year than the
Uh-huh.
previous 10 years combined.
Wow, that is something which is rewarding, and that definitely helps. So, my next question to you is, in terms of lamplight, what gets you more attention? Is it your CEO tag with the effusion, or your books on Kindle? What gets you more lamplight?
Actually, it's neither. I don't use I don't use CEO in my email, my business card. I'm CTO, Chief Technical Officer,
Officer.
because the executive, how can you trust a CEO, right? Oh, but technology, we trust. That's why we kind of trust Elon Musk, right? Yeah.
Absolutely right. So here we have with us the CTO. Right. My next question to you is, if you want to give advice to a 25-year-old self of yours, what would that advice be?
Well, that's easy. Don't fear failure. When you fail, you learn. If you don't fail, you don't learn. Too many cultures in the world. I travel to 30 countries a year, okay, pre-COVID.
Mhm.
I work with 45 countries a year. Three-fourths of those cultures are afraid of failure because culturally, that's a bad thing. You failed. No, no, no. I took my daughter
Mhm.
skiing, okay, when she was 5 years old. She was crying at the end of the day. I fell 5 times. My brothers never fell. I said,
Mhm.
where are the brothers? Brothers, come over here. You didn't learn anything today. You didn't fail. She smiled. I said, Anna, you fell 7 times. You learned 7 times. Folks, failure is how you learn. Get up. Don't remember failure. Don't dwell on it. Remember the lessons and move on.
That's a very good piece of advice, and certainly failures are something which is a cultural barrier across many countries out there, and definitely it's a stigma out here as well. But yeah, that is something which is to be cherished and something which
Yeah,
is to be learned from it as well.
yeah, indeed.
Right, perfect. My final question to you is, if Vance would not have been in the aviation industry, then what have been Vance associated
Well, I'd like to say that I'd be the number one player in the NBA.
with?
Okay. But I'm
Brilliant.
afraid my height and athletic skill wouldn't quite Got it. I would be a college professor. I love teaching. I developed the first aviation certification training for my employees 35 years ago, and now we do more training per year than all companies in the world combined on aviation and development certification. I'd be a professor.
Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, good to know that. Although, Vance, let me bring this up. You have repeatedly said that you are getting old, but your thoughts are much younger than some of the younger folks who are out here. So kudos to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time, and thanks for your time. Thanks. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thanks, folks. Keep safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Namaste, Vance. Namaste.
Namaste, everybody.
Namaste. Thank you. Cheers.